In the final, desperate days of World War II, as the Third Reich crumbled and Allied forces closed in from every direction, a dark secret was buried deep within the Bavarian Alps. Rumors spread of stolen gold, priceless art, and looted treasures spirited away by the Nazis. Hidden in caves, mines, and frozen lakes, a fortune so vast it could have reshaped the world economy. To this day, much of it remains missing. What happened to Hitler's lost treasure? Was it destroyed, stolen, or still concealed beneath the mountains that once shielded the Nazi regime? This is not just a story of gold and greed. It is a haunting tale of betrayal, ambition, and the lengths men will go to keep secrets buried. From frantic SS convoys slipping through mountain passes under the cover of night, to Allied intelligence agents hunting for clues in the chaos of occupied Germany, the mystery of Nazi gold has lingered for nearly 80 years, and the truth is, the search isn't over. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear is not folklore or legend. These are the files, testimonies, and eyewitness accounts that piece together one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. But before we descend into the tunnels of the past, take a moment to subscribe to this channel. By joining us, you become part of a growing community that brings hidden history back into the light. Stories censored, forgotten, or deliberately erased. Your support ensures we can continue uncovering the truth that others would prefer to stay buried. Now, let us begin. The year is 1945. Germany is in flames. The Reich is collapsing. And in the shadows of defeat, a handful of men are entrusted with one final mission: to hide the stolen wealth of a dying empire, and what they buried may still be out there, waiting to be found. Berlin, 1945. The capital of the Third Reich is a city in its death throes. Allied bombers roar overhead day and night, reducing entire districts to rubble. The once proud boulevards of Hitler's empire are now rivers of smoke and ash. Civilians stumble through the ruins in search of food, while soldiers, barely more than boys, cling to rifles with trembling hands. The war that was promised to last 1,000 years is ending in a matter of days. Inside the Reich Chancellery, deep in the Führerbunker, Hitler rants and raves at maps that no longer reflect reality. The Red Army is less than 40 miles from Berlin. The Western Allies are pushing through Bavaria, and the Reichstag, the symbol of Nazi power, is surrounded. Yet amid the chaos, orders still flow. Strange secret orders. Trusted SS officers, men fanatically loyal to the regime, are summoned in the dead of night. They are given sealed documents and whispered instructions. These are not directives to reinforce the front lines or evacuate civilians. These are commands concerning assets: gold bars stripped from European banks, crates of jewelry taken from deported families, priceless paintings stolen from Paris, Warsaw, and Amsterdam. The lifeblood of Europe's stolen wealth is being marshaled for one last journey. For years, the Nazi plunder machine had filled the vaults of the Reichsbank, the salt mines of Altaussee, and countless secret caches across occupied territory. But now, with defeat inevitable, Hitler and his inner circle fear that this treasure could fall into Allied hands. If the Reich cannot keep it, perhaps it can be hidden, or used to build a future underground network, a lifeline for those who plan to escape justice. In Munich, trains are loaded under heavy guard. In Innsbruck, convoys of covered trucks set out toward the Alps. Locals notice the movements but dare not speak. Rumors swirl. The SS is moving something too valuable to risk capture. Witnesses recall columns of vehicles moving at night, headlights dimmed, soldiers barking at farmers to stay inside. The mountains of Bavaria, rugged and full of caves, seem the perfect vault for a vanishing empire. But the gold is not the only secret. Within the sealed crates are archives, lists, ledgers, coded documents that detail the true scale of Nazi theft and corruption. Men like Heinrich Himmler and Hermann Göring understood. Whoever controls these records controls leverage, blackmail, and bargaining chips for survival in a post-war world. By April, as the Allies storm across the Rhine, the mission grows frantic. SS officers oversee the concealment of treasure in salt mines, abandoned tunnels, and frozen lakes. Some are destroyed with explosives to prevent discovery. Others vanish without a trace. The ordinary soldiers who accompany these convoys whisper among themselves. Some believe they are moving weapons for a secret counterattack. Others suspect the truth that they are burying the Reich's last fortune. Yet none dare question their orders. To hesitate is to be shot. In the villages of Bavaria, farmers and innkeepers catch fleeting glimpses of these operations. Trucks heavy with cargo disappear into mountain passes. Caves are sealed with concrete. And then silence. The soldiers move on, leaving behind only echoes in the valleys. Berlin is falling. The Reich is collapsing. But somewhere in the shadows of the Alps, something vast has been hidden. Something worth killing for. And as the convoys vanish into the mist of the Bavarian night, one question lingers. Will anyone ever see the treasure again? Night in the Bavarian Alps is a world of shadows. In April 1945, convoys of military trucks groan along narrow mountain roads, their engines muffled, their headlights painted blue to avoid detection. The Reich is dying, but here in the deep heart of Germany, the SS is moving with unnerving precision. This is not chaos. This is a mission carried out with cold determination. Inside the canvas-covered trucks, beneath tarps and blankets, lie fortunes beyond imagination. Bars of gold, stripped from national banks across Europe. Boxes of foreign currency, Reichsmarks stacked by the millions. Sacred relics, chalices and priceless paintings wrapped in burlap. Their frames still bearing inventory tags from museums in Paris, Vienna and Warsaw. With each mile, the weight of stolen civilization climbs higher into the mountains. The men driving the convoys are veterans, hardened by years of war. They know they are not delivering supplies to the front. Their commanders carry sealed papers authorizing access to tunnels, caves, and disused mines scattered across Bavaria and Austria. At every village checkpoint, civilians are ordered indoors. Farmers peering from behind shutters see only flashes of black uniforms, the glint of SS insignia and the rattle of armored escorts. Then silence. By dawn, the trucks are gone, swallowed by the mountains. One such convoy passes through Mittenwald, skirting the Austrian border. Eyewitnesses decades later would recall the sound of heavy vehicles, the barking of dogs, and soldiers shouting as crates were unloaded near an abandoned salt mine. The villagers never saw the cargo again. Another column is rumored to have vanished near Lake Toplitz, a deep alpine lake whose cold waters still hide Nazi secrets to this day. Divers would later find counterfeit British banknotes on the lake bed, evidence of Operation Bernhard, a Nazi scheme to collapse the British economy. But if forged money was discarded, what else might have been lowered into those icy depths? The convoys split, disappearing into different directions. Some climb higher, toward Berchtesgaden and Hitler's mountain stronghold, the Eagle's Nest. Others veer into Austria, toward mines vast enough to hold entire museums. The secrecy is absolute. Only a handful of SS officers know the full routes, and many of them will not live to tell their stories. The deeper question is why. Was the treasure meant to be preserved for a mythical Fourth Reich, to fund escape routes for war criminals? Or simply to deny the Allies the spoils of victory? The answers are as buried as the gold itself. For the ordinary soldiers conscripted into this work, the mission is haunting. They see crates marked with foreign languages, Jewish names scribbled on luggage, velvet bags spilling with jewelry. They load it all, knowing the rightful owners will never reclaim it. Some whisper of curses of gold stained with blood. Others calculate how many lives could be bought with just one of the bars they are stacking like firewood. Yet under the gaze of their SS officers, silence is the only safe response. Then almost as quickly as they began, the convoys vanish. By May, as Hitler lies dead in Berlin and Germany surrenders unconditionally, the treasure has melted into the landscape. Allied patrols will comb the mountains in the months to come, but for now, there is nothing. The crates are sealed in mines, the entrances collapsed with explosives, the lakes undisturbed, their secrets frozen beneath black waters. The Reich has fallen. Its armies are crushed. But its treasure has disappeared. And as Allied troops pour into Bavaria, rumors spread like wildfire. The Nazis have hidden something. Something vast. Something waiting to be found. By the summer of 1945, Germany was no longer a nation. It was a carcass carved into zones of occupation. But amid the ruins, whispers persisted. Farmers spoke of convoys vanishing into caves. Shepherds swore they had seen trucks dumping crates into mountain lakes. Allied intelligence officers, already overwhelmed with the task of rebuilding order, were now chasing shadows of something far more tantalizing: missing Nazi gold. The Americans moved first. Intelligence files reveal that as US troops advanced into Bavaria, they seized documents suggesting enormous transfers of Reichsbank assets in the war's final weeks. Among the officers assigned to investigate were members of the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives program, the famed Monuments Men. Their mission had been to save Europe's cultural treasures, but now their work intersected with something darker, tracing the looted wealth of an empire built on theft. Interrogations of captured Nazi officials produced fragments of the story. Some swore that the convoys had gone toward the Altersee salt mine in Austria, a labyrinthine vault where Michelangelo's Bruges Madonna and Vermeer's The Astronomer were found stacked among thousands of stolen masterpieces. Others insisted that crates of gold had been hidden in Berchtesgaden near Hitler's Alpine retreat. The Allies rushed to investigate, racing against time, fearful that locals or rival armies would reach the treasure first. In May 1945, US forces uncovered a staggering find near Merkers in Thuringia, a salt mine packed with 100 tons of gold, billions in currency, and priceless works of art. Photographs show American soldiers standing before mountains of gold bars, the stolen wealth of half of Europe laid bare under harsh floodlights. But this discovery only deepened the mystery. If so much was found here, how much more remained hidden in other mountains, still sealed behind walls of stone and dynamite? Patrols scoured Bavaria and Austria, following rumors like bloodhounds. Villagers led them to half-collapsed tunnels where the air reeked of cordite. Engineers drilled into mountainsides, sometimes uncovering chambers lined with explosives, booby traps meant to ensure no one could enter. In one chilling account, American troops stumbled upon a cave sealed so thoroughly that dynamite charges failed to crack it open. The entrance was left behind unexplored, a tomb that could still hold treasure or nothing at all. The British, too, were hunting. Their intelligence services received reports of Nazi officers fleeing south with suitcases of diamonds and currency. One such officer, caught at the Brenner Pass, carried coded documents that hinted at accounts in Swiss banks, suggesting that not all treasure had been buried, some had simply been laundered into the shadows of neutral nations. And then there were the Soviets. As the Red Army stormed into Austria, their units stripped entire vaults clean, loading priceless paintings and gold onto trains bound for Moscow. Officially, these were war reparations. Unofficially, it was looting on a national scale. To this day, many of the treasures taken by the Soviets have never been returned. For the Allied hunters, time was slipping away. The war had ended, but a new conflict was beginning: the Cold War. Resources were redirected, and the search for Nazi gold became entangled with espionage, propaganda, and political maneuvering. Files were classified, reports sealed. The truth began to vanish into the same darkness as the treasure itself. But one thing was certain. Somewhere in the Alps, beyond the reach of soldiers and spies, something remained hidden, something enormous. Something that had outlasted the war itself. And as the Allies pulled back from their frantic searches, one lingering question haunted them all: had they been just meters away from the greatest treasure hunt in history, and walked away empty-handed? When the guns of World War II finally fell silent in May 1945, a new struggle began, not over nations, but over secrets. The gold and art plundered by the Nazis had not only vanished into salt mines and mountain caves, It had also slipped into the vaults of private banks, the hands of corrupt officials, and the shadows of espionage. The hunt for Nazi treasure was no longer just an Allied operation. It had become a battlefield of the Cold War. For the Americans, the discovery of caches like Merker's was both a triumph and a warning. They knew that vast sums were still missing. Files declassified decades later revealed that U.S. intelligence quickly tied the mystery of Nazi gold to larger geopolitical concerns. If hidden assets could be found, they might fund the escape of war criminals. Worse, they could bankroll underground Nazi networks, such as the feared werewolf guerrillas who threatened to wage an insurgency in occupied Germany. The British shared these fears. MI6 launched its own investigations, trying to track the movements of SS officers who had seemingly vanished after the war. Some were believed to be in Spain, others in South America. Whispers emerged of gold, transferred through neutral Switzerland, funneled into secret accounts that could finance Nazi fugitives for decades. Yet many of the files detailing these operations were marked top secret and buried in archives. The truth was too dangerous to expose to a war-weary public. And then there were the Soviets. Stalin's intelligence services stripped occupied Austria and Germany with ruthless efficiency. Entire trains laden with artwork, jewelry and gold rolled eastward. The Kremlin declared these seizures rightful reparations for the destruction wrought by the Nazis. But among the crates of stolen wealth were items that had never belonged to the Soviet Union at all, priceless, European heritage that disappeared into vaults in Moscow and Leningrad. To this day, some of these artifacts remain locked away, hidden behind layers of denial. As the 1940s gave way to the 1950s, the story of Nazi gold became entangled with another shadowy world, espionage. American intelligence recruited former Nazis for their knowledge of the Soviet Union. In exchange for cooperation, some were shielded from prosecution. What they knew about hidden assets may have been quietly exchanged for freedom. Files point to instances where known SS officers negotiated their survival by revealing the locations of certain caches. Yet for every treasure uncovered, others slipped further into obscurity. The cover-up was not necessarily a single, coordinated plot. It was something murkier, a convergence of interests. Governments wanted control of the treasure, not transparency. Banks wished to protect their reputations, even as looted assets flowed into their accounts. Intelligence agencies found leverage in secrecy, not disclosure. And so, little by little, the story of the missing Nazi fortune was pushed out of the headlines, buried under classified stamps and diplomatic silence. For ordinary Germans living in the shadow of the Alps, however, the mystery never went away. Locals still told stories of soldiers unloading trucks into caves, of explosions echoing through the valleys as entrances were sealed. Fishermen at Lake Toplitz swore they saw bubbles rising from the depths long after the war ended. But their testimonies were dismissed as rumor, overshadowed by the growing Cold War and the race for nuclear supremacy. By the early 1960s, the great treasure hunt of 1945 had faded from public attention. Files remained locked. Witnesses aged and died. The gold, if it still lay beneath rock or water, was left to slumber. But silence does not erase history. It only deepens the mystery, and in the decades to come, a new generation of adventurers, divers, and treasure hunters would take up the search. They were not governments, not soldiers, but private men and women chasing whispers in the mountains. Some would vanish, others would return with fragments of the truth, because the treasure of the Reich had not been forgotten. It had only been waiting. The guns had fallen silent, and the Cold War had pushed the story of Nazi gold into the shadows. But rumors are hard to bury, and in the alpine villages of Bavaria and Austria, they never died. Shepherds still spoke of the trucks that disappeared into the mountains. Fishermen whispered of crates lowered into the black waters of highland lakes. By the 1950s, with Europe rebuilding, A new kind of hunter emerged, not soldiers, not spies, but civilians drawn by the promise of unimaginable wealth and the lure of solving history's greatest mystery. Some were motivated by greed, others by the desire to restore what was stolen to its rightful owners. All were driven by obsession. One of the first hotspots was Lake Toplitz, a body of water shrouded in mist and legend. Surrounded by cliffs and forests, its depths plunged into darkness untouched by sunlight. Locals believed the Nazis had dumped crates of gold there in 1945. In the late 1950s, divers sponsored by German newspapers descended into its waters. What they found shocked the world. Bundles of counterfeit British banknotes, perfectly preserved in watertight containers. This was the remains of Operation Bernhard, the Nazi scheme to flood Britain with fake currency. But for every diver who surfaced with paper money, there were whispers of heavier crates still resting below, sealed and waiting. Lake Toplitz proved deadly. Divers reported tangled branches, sudden pressure shifts, and the eerie sensation of being pulled downward by unseen forces. At least several lives were lost in its depths, their bodies never recovered. Yet the tragedies only fueled speculation. Why would the Nazis risk dumping worthless paper into the lake unless something far more valuable was hidden there as well? Elsewhere in the Alps, treasure hunters scoured abandoned tunnels. In Austria's salt mines, explorers claimed to find sealed chambers collapsed with explosives, as though deliberately entombed. In Germany, mountaineers discovered odd patches of concrete on sheer cliff faces, covering what looked like man-made entrances. Were these simply wartime fortifications or vaults filled with looted treasure? Governments occasionally joined the search. In the 1960s and 70s, Austrian police conducted controlled dives at Toplitz, recovering more counterfeit notes but no gold. Still, the lake remained a magnet. Each expedition ended with more questions than answers. And each unanswered question drew more hunters into the mountains. The obsession spread beyond Europe. Journalists chased leads that Nazi loot had been smuggled into South America, hidden in Argentina or Brazil, alongside fugitive war criminals. Conspiracy theorists argued that Swiss banks still sheltered billions in Nazi gold, laundered into accounts under false names. Court cases were filed, survivors demanded restitution. But the deeper the investigations went, the more obstacles arose: secrecy laws, missing documents, sudden deaths. By the late 20th century, technology offered new hope. Ground-penetrating radar, sonar scans of lakes and deep-diving submersibles opened terrain once thought inaccessible. Each breakthrough brought the possibility of finding the final resting place of Hitler's treasure. Yet time and again, promising leads collapsed into disappointment. Rusted crates held nothing but papers. Caverns once rumored to contain treasure were empty or collapsed. Still, the allure never faded. For the modern searchers, the treasure was more than gold. It was proof that history's shadows still held secrets, that the crimes of the Reich had not yet been fully exposed. To find the treasure was to shine a light into the darkest corners of the 20th century. And then, in the early 2000s, researchers uncovered a set of wartime documents long thought lost. Ledgers, maps and coded notes that hinted at one last cache, hidden in a place long overlooked. A vault in the Alps, sealed and waiting. If these papers were true, the greatest discovery of the 21st century lay just beyond reach. The search for Nazi gold is not simply the story of lost treasure. It is the story of lives stolen, of families torn apart, of cultures robbed of their very heritage. When we speak of crates of bullion, of diamonds and paintings wrapped in burlap, we are speaking of the possessions of real people. Millions of them, who were marched into ghettos, cattle cars, and death camps. For every gold bar stacked in a salt mine, there was a Jewish family stripped of its last inheritance. For every Rembrandt or Michelangelo hidden in a tunnel, there was a museum curator, a patron, a nation left with a hole in its history. The missing treasure is not just wealth. It is grief made tangible. In the decades since 1945, survivors and their descendants have fought not just to recover property, but to reclaim dignity. Lawsuits against banks that laundered Nazi gold have dragged into the courts of Switzerland, Austria, and the United States. Each trial reveals more shadows, hidden accounts, destroyed records, executives who looked away. Some restitution has been made, but vast sums remain unaccounted for. And then there are the artifacts, paintings, and sculptures still hanging in galleries or hidden in private collections, their rightful ownership contested to this day. Behind every piece lies a ghost story, a reminder of the Holocaust's reach. But what of the missing caches in the Alps? Were they real or the product of fevered imagination? Evidence suggests both. Allied documents, declassified long after the war, confirm that convoys did vanish into the mountains. Testimonies from villagers and soldiers alike describe nights of frantic unloading, explosives sealing tunnels, and whispers of gold being lowered into lakes. Yet the sheer scale of the treasure described often outpaces what has been found. The Great Vault at Merkers was discovered, yes, but what about the others? Lake Toplitz still lingers as the most enduring symbol of the mystery. Modern divers and sonar scans have revealed debris fields, counterfeit notes, and even fragments of Nazi weapons experiments. But gold, none has yet been found. Some historians argue that the Nazis never dared to sink bullion into a lake where recovery would be nearly impossible. Others believe the lake holds secrets so deep that technology has simply not yet reached them. Its depths are treacherous, choked with trees preserved in the icy water, a labyrinth that swallows divers whole. Perhaps the truth still waits at the bottom, or perhaps it was never there at all. And then there are the sealed caves. In Austria and Bavaria, entire networks of mines were collapsed, sometimes deliberately by retreating SS units, sometimes by Allied demolition teams afraid of hidden explosives. What lies behind those walls of rock? Empty chambers, or the last hoard of the Reich? We may never know. Dynamite erased what history had left behind. The Cold War made certainty impossible. Intelligence agencies on both sides had reasons to conceal discoveries. A hidden cache could be quietly seized, its gold funneled into covert operations. A priceless painting could vanish into a private collection, traded for silence. The truth is that some treasures may have been found and deliberately kept secret. Governments rarely admit to ghost stories when the ghosts are made of gold. Yet despite the uncertainty, the obsession endures. Every decade brings new searchers to the Alps. Scientists, divers, adventurers, even conspiracy theorists. Some risk their lives. Some lose them. All chase the same mirage, that just beyond the next tunnel, the next dive, the next sealed vault, lies the answer to one of history's greatest riddles. But perhaps the most haunting truth is this: even if the gold is found, it cannot restore what was lost. Gold can be melted, paintings restored, artifacts displayed, but the people, the millions who perished, cannot be brought back. The treasure is not merely missing wealth. It is evidence of crimes too vast to fully comprehend. It is the shadow of genocide, preserved in glittering metal and oil paint. And so, the mystery of Nazi gold is more than a treasure hunt. It is a question for all of us. How do we confront the ghosts of history? Do we chase them for profit, for adventure, or to honor the memory of those who suffered? Every searcher must decide which path they walk. As the Bavarian Alps stand silent beneath their snow-capped peaks, we may never know how much truth lies buried in their caves and lakes. Perhaps the treasure is still there, locked away by time and stone. Perhaps it has already been found, its story silenced by governments and banks. Or perhaps it was never as vast as legend suggests, magnified by decades of rumor. But one fact remains undeniable: the Nazis did hide treasure. Some of it has been recovered, much of it has not. And until every crate is accounted for, until every painting is returned, the mystery will haunt the world. 80 years later, the Alps remain a graveyard of secrets. And the question lingers: if the gold still lies beneath the mountains, who will uncover it, and at what cost? The story you've just heard is more than a documentary. It is a reminder that history does not end when the battles do. Shadows linger, questions remain, and truth often hides deeper than any mine. Now it's your turn. Do you believe the Nazi treasure is still out there, hidden in the Bavarian Alps? Or was it quietly seized long ago? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your theories. And if you felt the weight of this journey into history's shadows, subscribe to this channel. Together, we'll continue uncovering the secrets the world tried to bury, because sometimes the past is not gone. It's only waiting to be found.